Alright everybody, doing a crankcase split. This is a Husqvarna 385. Connecting rod bearing has gone down in this one. Just kind of reading through some comments on other saw channels. Somebody said they'd never seen that in a clone. I've seen it in everything. So we've already pulled the clutch. And there is a special tool for that. Flywheel's off. Obviously this crank is ruined for all reasonable purposes. Using a Husqvarna crankcase splitter. Part number 502516101. Right there at my thumb is the part number. Get that to focus. It might not. There we go, 502-516-101. This will split just about anything Husqvarna makes if it'll fit in there. So we're popping all the crankcase bolts next. So I'm going to put just a little assembly lube on the end of this and also in the threads. May be some serious torque involved, and using other equipment like this, it's a practice that I sometimes do. So earlier removed a lot of this stuff, the tank, carb nest. I'm going to take the oil pump off just to get everything out of the way so that we don't possibly damage anything that we don't want to damage. And you may or may not know the 585 was replaced by the 390. So I'm just removing the oil pump at this time, no big deal. So we're going to pull the brake band. The brake band has got to come out in order for the oil pump to clear. Basic stuff. So I made statements through the years, such as I don't use cylinder assembly tools. Right now I'm saying I don't use an impact taking things apart, but I have begun using them to spin clutches off, and I really like that. But as far as stuff like this, still using manual wrenches at this time. So brake band assembly. There's a plastic block right here in the case. Lifts out. The brass tube on the oil pump, like so. So I'm going to blow all this out right here, and I'll bring you back. So we've got the crankcase screws. You got one in the oil tank right here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 around the crankcase bearings themselves, and 6 out here in front. So a total of 6 case screws. Maybe. Tell you a little story. So the 371, being the first of that family to come out, 371, 372, 362 Husqvarna, and then the 375 in models XP and XPG, all of the above. Early on, the dealership that I worked for had a 371 that would start, and you could fall with it. The saw, when it was horizontal, it ran great. When you set it up right to buck, it would shut down almost as if it locked up, and that saw was looked at repeatedly. Brand new saw, very low hours. And finally I was asked to look at it. Mechanic work at that shop, braking chains and carb work, stuff like that, you know, just simple stuff. Every now and then there'd be a top end or something, but every now and then one would come up that nobody could fix, and wanted me to take it home, work on it after hours. Anyway, come to find out, the crankcase bolts had backed out of it. I don't know if they were never given the final torque at the factory, but they all backed out and were getting into the back of the flywheel. When you set the saw up right to buck, in the bucking position, the crankcase bolts would get into the back of the flywheel and shut the saw down. The way I found that, shavings were coming out of the flywheel, and I thought that the coil, the ignition coil, had came loose and was getting into the flywheel, but that wasn't what it was. Got inside there and figured that one out. Okay, all the case bolts are out. We're going to remove the piston next and go from there. So I've got a C-clamp, a socket that fits through the piston pinhole just enough to contact the pin, and then a 5/8 open box end wrench over here, clearance just right to push that piston pin on through. And this works nicely. Okay. Okay, there's our piston. And now we'll begin the process of using the crankcase splitter. just repeatedly, a little bit at a time. Okay, we just split. So, no beating, no banging. We just split the case. Okay. So I applied a little bit of pressure on one side and then a little bit of pressure on the other. Split. No heat, no hammers, just like that. Okay, we're free and clear on the drive side. Okay. A note of interest, I want to bring you in right quick. So a few weeks back, I was adapting a video entitled Adapting Steel Bars to a Husqvarna 562. A gentleman told me that you could put a 12mm stud in a Husqvarna 562, which is incorrect, and they press in. And this is a 385, but anyway, I thought, well, maybe I've missed something. Maybe something's changed in the industry. So I began checking that out, and sure enough, that was not the case. It's been some time since I attended a factory service school, but no, Husqvarna Steel does not use a 12mm stud in their press-in cases. That's not the case, pun intended. So, continuing with the process, back over to the other side, and again, lining everything up, and gentle inline pressure. Yeah, that's what you heard. So we're basically free and clear now. Okay. All right, that's it. Cases are split and the crank is free. So all the case bolts are the same length. I meant to include that. There's 3 case bolts and they're all the same length. I will continue to protect these threads, even though for all practical purposes this crank is ruined. Can be rebuilt by using special methods. So here are our connecting rod bearings, roller pins. And as I had mentioned, a fellow had said he had never seen one. That's what one looks like. OEM Husqvarna 385. No discoloration on the rod. It has a golden hue. I don't see any heat. So there's that. I've got another one to split. May or may not do this in the same video. Probably not. We're going to split them separately. Thank you for watching.